My Hero Academia, episode 3 for Vigilantes, titled B. A new threat emerges, some underlying stories get developed, and we see a new dynamic amongst our vigilantes. Let's talk about it. Alright, guys, Brent here back with Geek Variants, cover all things Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, anime, gaming, Star Wars, and more. This time, My Hero Academia Vigilantes, episode 3B. This episode largely focused on building some underlying relationships and some small exposition as far as world building for what we have established going on this far. And if you're not really interested in that, or just a whole bunch of cameos of what, say, like a young Endeavor, a young Best Genius, or a young All Might kind of look like, you don't really care too much in terms of what happened in this episode. Personally, I'm really enjoying the slow build and the slow burn on this one. I know we're probably going to get maybe at best 3 seasons out of this show, but at the same time, it's become a fun ride for me in the sense that this is some nice layers and additions to add on to something that we already have existing with My Hero Academia, which is going into its final season. Seeing the more underlying underbelly of things has been kind of a privilege and kind of a joy to see. We see how, even in the eyes of the detective or the cop the detective was questioning, said, "Hey, a drug like this IDEO trigger, turning your small quirks into hero level quirks, I can definitely see the allure of it." Even to have the people who enforce the laws, keep the peace, see that ultimately the villains and what they're doing makes a lot of sense. Kind of shows you what the underbelly of this universe is really like. For those who are quirkless or who have, kind of like Crawler, at kind of a lame quirk, being able to enhance it and amplify your powers, albeit at the cost of your common sense or your sense of right and wrong, to the point you're almost primitive in your form of thinking, definitely changes how things are amplified in the sense of your world. So they understand and can almost empathize with where the villains are coming from and see that what they're trying to do really isn't all that bad. It's just the ways in which the drug activates inside of you and makes you inhibited is the main issue, because usually cause chaos, destruction. You don't really get what you want ideally, unless you're someone who has a really strong mental capacity to keep at least some part of your personal being with you, which thus far haven't seen it. Haven't seen a lick of it whatsoever. But I know for sure whoever this queen bee is that we have met, seeing her continue to work and grow, we're going to see her run into somebody who's actually pushing the real stuff out here. Because if they're able to get around how Knuckles knows how to investigate, aka the black tongue tip, or just the fact of the little vials that each bee was carrying being passed around, this could be a widespread problem on a grand scale. If the heroes hadn't responded like they did in this episode, that district likely is getting a huge upturn, because there's no way Knuckles, Crawler, and Pop Girl were going to handle everything going here. Because at best, Pop Girl is an idol. She doesn't really contribute too much in terms of the team sense of getting things done, but her fame allows them to question people and talk to people in ways that otherwise you wouldn't, because Crawler has literally no credibility to his character whatsoever, other than when he was nice guy, and now that he's no longer a nice guy, it's kind of a weird gray area. And Knuckles, as we've seen, punches first, asks later. Kind of hard to get really good answers out of somebody if they're unconscious. It's kind of like, "Hey, Brent, why aren't you taking allergy medications even though your allergies are awful?" "Well, my allergy medication says if you're unconscious, you can't sneeze." Sure, I defeated the source problem, but I didn't really handle the main issue that, allergies are just existing, if you catch my drift. But while this episode was going on, we see that a super fan really wanted to meet Pop Girl. He wanted to cut the line. He was kind of someone who was socially awkward, had a weird quirk, and was trying to pass on through everything. And while Pop Girl's two main fans, the two middle schoolers, were like, "Hey, go ahead and just wait, be patient, and show your love for her in a more respectful and humane boundary," he ultimately decided to try and jump the line. took the drug. Next thing you know, he got all crazy and started chasing her around. They decided to try and stop him with Knuckles and Crawler, only to realize he's an eel. He's slippery, he's slimy, he's impossible to control. So, for all intensive purposes, they had to lure him into a trap with Pop Girl and douse him with flour. Because, flour dries out everything it comes into contact with, therefore, he's no longer slippery. And then a few punches later, we have everything handled and problem solved. Short and sweet. Or so you think. As Pop Girl is kind of going for some more information on this individual with Crawler, they run into a super fan of hers who wants to take a couple selfies, really get to know her real quick. Coming to find out, that is our new villain on the scene. And I'm going to assume she's just a sub villain because she says she's a part time villain because she's a high schooler. So I don't know how you get time to kind of fall into this niche. But hey, I digress. This is one of the intricacies of this universe. You're able to, work a job, have a regular social life, family life, and then still have time to be a villain on the side. My, what grand time they must have, or their schooling must be sufficiently easy in order to be able to do things of this nature. And she turns out to be someone who's able to control bees because it freaked me out to absolutely the umpteenth degree to see that a bee literally landed on her face and crawled directly under her eye patch and into her eye. That is gross. In only so many terms, it's heinous, it's awful, it made me uncomfortable, but it is what it is. But we see that she can feel pain when the bees are ultimately squashed because when Knuckles caught a hold of one and started running like a madman trying to question people, he ultimately went like this and squashed it. And she was able to feel the pain directly from that swish. So, and she's already perfectly aware of who Knuckles is. So there's going to be some kind of showdown at some point, or they may even have some ongoing history, which is crazy to think that a high schooler would have on-site beef with a 40-year-old man. But hey, that's just the way things work, I guess, in this hero society. And now that we've kind of established where we're going to be with our characters, it's going to be curious for me to see just how people like All Might or Best Jeanist or Aizawa or even heck, one of my favorite characters to hate on in this entire series, Endeavor, do when they're dealt with a problem such as this. Because right now, these heroes seem to have things on lock, but for how much longer? There's always going to be a bigger threat. And ultimately, who's not to say that this leads all the way back up to All for One at the end of the day, that he's someone who's trying to push this out and kind of seeing what he's able to amplify on the scene. I haven't read the manga or the source material. I'm super curious to see ultimately where that goes. And I'd be curious to see you hit that lovely subscribe button. It's free, greatly helps us out, and suggests us in the future for content you enjoy. You just listen to me ramble for about 8 minutes. And if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to hit that like button. It greatly helps us out as well. I'm Brent for Geek Variants. I'll see you in the next one for some Skyrim adventures later on today. Have a good one.